This Ag News Update brought to you by American Implement, indebted to the past, committed to the future. In a moment, Kansas U.S. Senator Jerry Moran.
SNS Trailer Sales, with 2 locations in Ness City, Kansas, is where everybody goes to buy or rent trailers. They feature the all-new, all-aluminum Mauer grain trailer with all of the electric options, the easy-to-load detached trailers, and a huge stock of header trailers. At the west location, you'll find bumper poles, goosenecks, and oilfield specialty trailers, along with flat and utility beds for pickups. SNS Trailer Sales in Ness City and on the web, but remember, you do have to spell out the "and."
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception: keeping electricity affordable.
Wheatland Electric, delivering energy for life, your Touchstone Energy Cooperative.
And our special guest is Kansas Senator Jerry Moran. Senator, thanks for taking a few moments to join us.
Ken, good to be with you and with our viewers and listeners. Great to spend some time. I wish that the news was better in the ag world.
Well, let's talk about all those things. And you spent a lot of time during this COVID-19 situation trying to bring some relief to Kansas farmers and ranchers. And it seems like we're making some progress, but there's just an awful long way to go.
Absolutely. I mean, going back to when Congress and the Senate in particular was in session, I teamed up with a handful of my ag colleagues in the Senate to insist that before we passed phase 3, that it would include money for support of farmers and ranchers, and particularly the livestock sector. Ultimately, we were successful in getting $19 billion into a program that USDA has announced and is in the process of putting an application in front of farmers and ranchers. We particularly were interested in livestock because that's not a normal farm program. That's not a normal place that USDA looks. And in many instances, livestock producers are ones who generally tell you, we don't want anything to do with government. But things were so severe, so challenging that there was a demand and a need for help, and we were successful in including specifically livestock in the program. And the Secretary Perdue, has announced a program that includes some dollars for livestock along with specialty crops and dairy. And so we're anxious to see what that looks like. And there are a lot of challenges. You say we have a long way to go. It's not enough money, and we have certainly concerns with payment limitations when it comes to livestock producers.
We'll talk about that. Will that be successful? Because it doesn't take too long to get to that $250,000 cap, even though many folks are saying that should be enough. But there's concern about that. There's concern about some of those dollars and all those dollars going directly to the producer.
Ken, of course, it will. I think the estimates are a $13 billion loss in the country. I doubt that those numbers are current. $5 billion on the $13 billion on the beef side, and $5 billion on the pork side. And with the challenges we face with the processing of meat, the slaughter of meat, and packing, we have significant problems. And I would guess those numbers are now outdated. So not enough money, but also if you apply payment limitations to the livestock sector, usually and normally in a farm bill, payment limitations, because the farm programs apply to crops, there's a payment limitation. And the challenge here is that's very few cow-calf pairs, very few cattle on feed. If you put $125,000 per commodity cap on that payment, and in a sense, while $125,000 is never a lot of money, it's always a lot of money is the way to say that. It's always a lot of money. In this case, it wouldn't go very far in trying to solve the huge challenges that the livestock producers face today.
U.S. Senator Jerry Moran is our guest. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back and talk more in just a moment.
When you've had a best friend for over 50 years, you develop a trust. And the Scot Co-op has been a trusted rural friend since 1957. A co-op keeps money in the area, doing business for and with their members. and that helps keep their hometown thriving with keeping money in the community. Scot Co-op is not just an elevator. It's the rural way of doing business. So, when you see an elevator, remember your friends at Scot Co-op. Wulfgar Construction and Irrigation has been around a long time, and a lot of folks have trusted them to design, build, and service all sizes of commercial and on-farm storage for grain and equipment. Wulfgar is also known for their outstanding irrigation division, where they stock a complete selection of nozzles, regulators, drops, gear drives, electrical, and structure components. Looking for an electric motor? Wulfgar has a large selection in single and three-phase. Next time, reach out to the pros who have decades of experience at taking care of business the right way. Wulfgar Construction and Irrigation.
And our special guest is U.S. Senator Jerry Moran. And Senator, as we hear, there continues to be more discussion of even more packages being worked on, infrastructure being one of them. And some are saying this may be a way to get something as important as the locks and dams. Now, what does that mean for rural Kansas? Maybe not much other than the big picture. It's been something that helps the flow of a lot of commodities that has been bottled up for years.
President Trump in particular, but also House Democrats, have been very interested in an infrastructure program. Locks and dams, of course, for agriculture, but also roads and bridges and highways for agriculture and everyone else. I think the issue here is that if money is going to be spent to try to get the economy moving, let's make sure we spend money on something we would spend it on anyway. Maybe we are accelerating the time in which we invest in infrastructure, but we know we're going to have to invest sometime in the near future, and at a time in which our country's economy is so challenged and people are in need of work. This is perhaps a really good time to invest in agriculture. I think the issue here will be one of fiscal responsibility. We can't just keep continuing federal dollars, federal taxpayer dollars, into this circumstance. We need a growing economy. There's not enough tax dollars to overcome an economy that is not at work. And so if we can do this in a way that is not increasing the deficit further, but is putting people to work, generating dollars into the economy, and again, on something that we would spend money on anyway, or need to spend money on anyway, I think it's worth us taking a look. And again, I think that we're in, I guess, what I call phase 3.5. We've passed three major pieces of legislation, a second smaller one to add some money, particularly into the PPP program. So 3.5 phases. And in Washington this week, in the Senate at least, the discussions among ourselves began once again to figure out what, if any, there is to phase 4. But having said that, again, I would reiterate, there isn't enough money in Washington, D.C., because money doesn't come from Washington, D.C. It comes out of taxpayer pockets, or we borrow it. And so what we do from here on we need to make certain that we're not spending money that is going to create another crisis a few months or a few years down the road when the debt and deficit comes back to kill our economy once again.
Will you and others continue to put pressure on Secretary Perdue to release what they know right now in the investigation of what's going on with the disparaging difference in the cattle market, and we talked about the Holcomb fire, and now we have the Corona situation. People in the countryside are just up in arms, as most people are, and wanting to get to the bottom of what's really going on.
Ken, absolutely. I mean, we were anxiously awaiting for a USDA report on what was the market consequences as a result of the fire at Holcomb at the Tyson plant in Kansas now months ago. That hasn't appeared yet. And of course, the request was, and the Secretary agreed, to expand that investigation into the circumstances we faced when meat prices were so high at the grocery store and live cattle prices were so low at the market. So it is, and we're anxiously awaiting, and I know that there's a lot of pressure. I've had a conversation with Secretary Perdue asking him about this topic. We will re-up that request, and I have a later call this week with Secretary Northey, in which we'll have a chance to remind the department that there is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of angst about what's going on in cattle markets across Kansas and around the country.
Before we wrap up, just quickly, with all the processing plants we do have in Kansas, immigration, H-2A has been a big issue. Looks like for now the situation's been resolved, but when the dust kind of settles, is this going to be a chance for finally reaching reform when it comes to immigration and working in agriculture?
Ken, you're so right to emphasize the word finally. I hope that's the case. We've been talking agricultural workers for as long as I've been a member of Congress. The demand for those who work in agriculture, both short-term and long-term, hasn't diminished. And this COVID-19 virus highlights the importance of those who come to the United States to work in agriculture. So maybe this is the wake-up call. There's a lot of wake-up calls that come from this COVID-19 presence in our country. I hope this is one of them. I clearly do. We need to get there.
All right, Senator, we know you have a busy schedule, but we do thank you for the opportunity to visit with us and give us the update of what's going on, and maybe we can have a conversation in the coming weeks.
Ken, thank you. Thank you for the interview and the opportunity to talk about agriculture, our state's certainly most important industry.
Senator Jerry Moran has joined us. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up.
Day and night till the job is done. Teeter is the one that works for you. Fields of green reaching toward the sun. Teeter is the one that works for you. Teeter is the one. Teeter is the one that works for you. Teeter Irrigation, your source for water management.
Would you like to see something done about high gas prices and low unemployment? Western Plains Energy in Campus, Kansas is doing something about it. They're a proud part of Growth Energy, America's ethanol supporters, and they employ 38 people and will be adding more following the expansion. Ethanol fuel not only reduces the cost of regular gasoline, it's good for the environment and keeps money right here in the United States while supporting local rural jobs. Western Plains Energy, doing something for the future.
AM 1030 KBUF brings you market updates and agriculture information weekdays throughout the day, beginning at 6 a.m. Also, be social with us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching.